Absolutely.
Mhm.
So, welcome everybody. Jack McCorkle, the Executive Director for the Office of Alumni Relations within University Advancement. And on behalf of our office, I want to welcome you to our fireside chat on the venture capital industry. Just a few quick ground rules today. We're going to ask people to keep their camera and their microphones off with the exception of the panelists and speakers. If you have a question, please use the chat function. My colleague Katie DeMaio will make sure those questions are asked. Panels ask that we share the attendee list with them. So if for some reason you don't want your information shared, please contact Katie and myself and we'll pull you off the list. Otherwise, we'll share that with the panelists after the event. And finally, just a reminder that this event is being recorded and will be placed in our virtual archives to be enjoyed by those who could not make it today. So whether you're an alumnus, panel, a parent, student, staff, or a friend, you're an important part of a thriving global Northeastern community. And our community is never stronger than when we come together at events like this. Learning doesn't stop when you walk across the stage and receive your diploma from Northeastern. Our alumni are eager to stay on top of their fields, and programs like this help them achieve that. Tonight's program is a volunteer-led initiative that our office is helping to facilitate. Our host tonight, Oshinaike, is a great example of an engaged alum who reflects the attitude of continual learning and wanting to give back to the Northeastern network. I was a 2016 graduate, and he is currently the CEO and co-founder of Food Space. So I'd like to thank you for making us aware of what entrepreneurial networks are looking for and bringing this event idea to us. I'll now turn it over to you, Ayo, and let you introduce our great panel for tonight.
Definitely, and I'm pretty excited. Sorry everybody on the call about some of the technical difficulties, but we're really excited to have everybody here. And just to start off, what we're gonna do is there's a couple wonderful people I'd like to introduce to everybody, you know, Jeff, Maha, Sarah, and Ron. But what I always think is wonderful is to start off a meeting a little bit talking about what's going on in the community in Boston, especially if we're talking about entrepreneurship investment, a little plug-in about from Nick, talking about what he's working on in terms of his program at in Roxbury community. So I'll let Nick introduce himself and we'll take the first 5 minutes to go about speaking a little bit about his program, and then we'll get more into the entrepreneurship and why everybody joined in today.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Can everyone hear me?
Perfect,
Yes.
yeah.
Great. I graduated from Northeastern in 1990, a few years before IO. And I started out running track and an econ major. But after Northeastern, I was given a wonderful opportunity to work in financial services for 10 years. So I was a financial advisor where I sold stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and all the different types of insurances. About 16 years ago, I came up with this bright idea that I wanted to empower people. I was traveling around the country and I was selling all these products for the large companies, but there was a lot of people who weren't exposed to the products and services that were available, I guess basically in the community. So I formed the Vincita Institute. Vincita is the Italian word for victory of the people. So we just started programming and speaking to people in the community about the importance of making better informed financial decisions. And then 8 years ago, we did okay, but 8 years ago, Northeastern actually put us on the map. I knocked on the door. I spoke to Dave Isberg, who's one of my biggest cheerleaders, and John Tobin, and I said, listen, what can we do to help to empower the community with by way of financial literacy so that they don't get taken advantage of? So we're not selling them products, but just helping them to become more aware. And we developed this relationship over the last 8 years, and it's only gotten better. And once again, like I said, it put Northeastern on the map, but it allows us to truly give back to the community. And through the Office of City and Community Affairs, as well as Northeastern Crossing, we've invited the community. So we have a great nexus between Northeastern University and the areas that touch Northeastern, whether it's Fenway, Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, those types of areas. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to have this relationship, and I know it's going to get even better.
Yes, so that's why I appreciate Nick you joining our call and really speaking in the first piece. What I think is wonderful is after this call, make sure that all the attendees and all the panelists have a little bit more information, a bio and an email to contact you on. But why I found it important to open up really our investment and entrepreneurship chat with helping out the community, because I think it's very important for people to understand investment, what that means. Start now so that you can have into the future, and really helping out the community to understand that is pretty pinnacle in the industry. So thank you again, Nick, and I'll make sure to send everybody your contact information. But I am also very excited to have our wonderful panelists tonight, and also our wonderful, some of the mentors that have been part of my life, Jeff Bornstein, Sarah, Maha, and also Ron. And just what I would love to do is maybe we can start off with a little bit of bio, starting with you, Sarah, because I think you're at the top left, and just a little bit about what you're working on. And then we can go to Jeff, Maha, and then Ron, and then we can really start off some of the questions to get a little people more involved in more answers of what it is to be an entrepreneur in the ecosystem.
Sure. Hi, it's great to be here. I'm Sarah. I'm a partner at Pillar, and we're a seed stage venture firm based in Boston that's co-founded by 22 CEOs who've built big billion-dollar companies here. So the CEOs of DraftKings and TripAdvisor and Wayfair. And we're the first capital in for founders primarily in Boston who are building kind of the next generation of big pillar companies here in town across robotics and 3D printing and consumer and SaaS, a broad spectrum of companies.
Nice. Jeff?
Yeah, so Jeff Bornstein, I spent almost 30 years in corporate America as a vice chair and CFO. When I left, I started with Ron, who you'll hear from shortly, Whipstick Ventures, because I'd always had an interest in working with early stage companies in particular areas, and where Ron and I could leverage our experience to be actively involved. So we're not, in Whipstick Ventures, we are active investors. We're not passive. And so there's only so many companies we can work with. So we try to be pretty selective with the companies we work with. And a lot of that has to do with the quality of the founders and the teams that are trying to build something. I also am the managing partner of Generation Capital for Direct Investments, which is a multi-billion-dollar family office. So I'm doing a little bit less on the Whipstick Ventures stuff now and a lot more in growth equity, distressed debt, and structuring. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. I think Maha, if you want to give a little bit of bio about it, just introduce.
Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Maha Ibrahim. I grew up outside of Boston, so I love hearing all of the Boston accents. It makes me smile. I am with Canaan Partners. We're an early stage venture firm. I've been with my firm now for 20 years. We focus both on healthcare and tech. We are actively investing, and we're active investors. So at the early stage, it's about 5 people in a business plan on up, and we sit on boards and hopefully stay with the company until their exit.
Wonderful. And then leaving off with Ron, a little bit of bio about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Ron Hynes, as Jeff said, investing partner with Jeff at Whipstick Ventures. I'm also CEO of Vesta Payment Solutions. We are a 25-year-old startup. I took over the company about 12 months ago. And using AI, both supervised and unsupervised machine learning, data science, we work with large enterprise and small to medium-sized e-commerce merchants around the world, looking at their card not present transactions in flight and making a determination whether or not we think the transaction is good or bad, fraud or not fraudulent. And I spent most of my life, like Jeff, in corporate America. Always ended up, even inside of corporations, in more entrepreneurial roles. And for the last, I guess, 6 years since I left MasterCard, have been in a number of different early stage startups and turnarounds like Vesta.
Nice. Well, that's why I think it's a wonderful opportunity to have everyone here, and I really appreciate that. I think it really has the intersection of really the VC arm of investments, but also having people that have worked as CEOs or leaders in companies as well. So having that experience to share to the Boston community. And I think just to start off, one of the questions that I had, I guess to give a little bit about myself as well. I'm Oshinaike, CEO of Food Space. For the past couple of years, our goal has been to create product transparency and just make sure the retail industry and the CPG industry has accurate data on the goods that they sell. I could tell you a little bit more about that, but I'm really excited to just jump in and ask a couple of questions just to have everybody have a better understanding of what the entrepreneurship lifestyle looks like and also what the life of a VC firm looks like. So one of the first questions I actually had was just starting out with Maha and Jeff. I thought it'd be wonderful to talk about what got you into working at a venture capitalist. What was the idea that brought you into that? And also, how do you get the opportunity to either create your own VC firm or even be able to be employed at a VC firm? So just that's a little question that I thought would be wonderful to ask to start off with.
Sarah, why don't you go first?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, happy to jump in. So I kind of tripped and fell into VC. I spent most of my career building companies, enterprise SaaS and consumer startups. Most recently, I helped to build a company called Smarter, which we sold to a company called Pluralsight, which is a big public online learning company on the West Coast. And I was on their management team for about 1.5 years. And when I resigned from that role, I was looking around thinking about what I wanted to do next. And I talked to a bunch of people and explicitly said, I do not want to go into VC. I have absolutely no interest in going into venture capital. And then I met my partner, Jamie, who had recently started Pillar, and he was talking to me about the firm. And it just sounded different, but it also, I think I had thought about VC from a finance perspective historically, and I hadn't thought as much about people and connection and the opportunity to support entrepreneurs. And while we're not building, be part of the journey in a different way. And so as I started to hear more and think about more deeply what was involved in venture, I realized it checked all the boxes for me personally. It gave me that chance to really build community, share insight and advice from the journey I'd had on the operating side building. And then I also, have the chance to build at Pillar because we're standing up a relatively new venture firm that's only 4 years old. And so I kind of get to scratch that itch too by doing something that's new. But so for me, it was all about like building companies, building up that experience that I could bring to startups. And then I co-founded a leadership development company called Intelligently here in Boston. And over the course of 5 years, we met about 4,000 people who we helped to train in management roles. And so by then I had a community. So I had operating experience and a community, which were two critical components for us at Pillar in the venture world. And I'll just give a quick plug for anybody who's interested in getting involved in venture. Sarah Downey, who used to be a VC at Accomplice, wrote a great blog post about this on Medium about all the different paths to get into VC. So mine is only one, so it's more comprehensive.
That's wonderful. And I think like what I'll do at the end is I'll also send off of that post as well. But that's wonderful. Is there anybody else that wanted to kind of talk about their experience as well of how maybe if they have a little bit different experience than Sarah getting into VC?
Yeah, let me just add really quickly that if you look across a cross-section of venture people, go to their websites, people come from all different backgrounds, all different spaces. We have, some of the most successful venture people are reporters, not necessarily, lawyers, not necessarily ones that went to Harvard Business School and, did a startup and then went into venture, although that is a well-trodden path. So I would just encourage people, if they are interested in investing, to learn as much as they can, but don't think that there is a roadblock there. The roadblock is really access into these firms, letting them get to know you. So there's an organization that we started up a couple of years ago, specifically focused on women because we really wanted to increase the number of female representation at the investing table. That group is called All Raise. They have a number of resources on their website if you are looking to get into venture to help with access.
Okay. Well, that's one. And what I think what's interesting about venture is that it kind of has, like Sarah mentioned and you as well, Maha, it has the experience of you might want to be an entrepreneur, you might want to get into investment, but you really see a lot of deals. So you're really part of the community, you're at the center of it. And that's why I really think it's pretty interesting about it as well. And one thing that's pretty cool is that, Ron, your experience as well, not only being part of the VC sector, or the investment sector, but also being a CEO. How has that really helped you understand, or how has that opportunity of having those both roles at the same time kind of led you to where you are right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would echo a little bit what Sarah said as well. Is you never know where your opportunities are going to come from. And I'm the CEO of Vesta today because of an investment Jeff and I made in a green technology company out in Portland, Oregon, which doesn't seem to really fit. But I was out there in a board meeting, and with all my past experience in payments and fraud and financial inclusion, someone made an introduction to the founder of Vesta, and we hit it off, and he asked me to come in and really help him figure out how we change the trajectory of that company. And so I think that's a big piece. And there is no set path to VC. I've always wanted to be an investor. I've always wanted to help. And I think what I like about seed and venture investing is you really get to work with management teams and help them think about where they're going and what they're doing and how they're doing it, because there's it's not a blank slate or a blank canvas, but there's a lot more learning and road ahead than when you get into some of the later stage investing that a lot of firms do.
Definitely. And I'm actually, one thing that's pretty interesting that I'd love to hear as well is in terms of, Jeff, with your experience as well working at Whipstick and then now working at your new organization, have you seen any change in the current investment landscape with COVID-19 happening, or this year, or has that changed any of your investments? Because I think that's a lot of startups and a lot of entrepreneurs are trying to understand with the current situation, does that change the mindset of VC or investing in? Are people looking at different things? Are you looking at different things now? Just would like to kind of start off with that piece just to see what's going on.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have two different answers. So from the VC side, what Ron and I do, I think so far we've been pretty lucky. If you look at our portfolio, with maybe one exception, the companies that we work with have either benefited from what's happened with COVID or have not been penalized as a result of it. We have one investment that had to do a major pivot. It was a venue platform. There aren't a lot of venues today. And listen, this is when you really learn about what the folks you're working with and betting on, what they're made of. And even in that instance, without going through too much detail, they're growing revenue 50% a month over month on AAR and, through their pivot, et cetera. So, necessity is the mother of invention. And so there's a ton of learning there. But so what I see on the VC side today, I don't know that it's I don't know if Ron would agree with this, or Maha or Sarah. I don't know that the types of things we're looking at are materially different than they were before. There's no questions like this platform we're on right now, Zoom, has found an audience that it never could have imagined absent COVID. But, the things that we're focused on, and we're all over the map. We do biotech. We took our first biotech investment, just went public 2 months ago. Our first green energy battery, non-lithium ion, importantly. Grid scale battery is going to go public here in October. And so, as we've worked through the 3 years we've been working with these guys and watch that evolution, it's pretty amazing. And none of that's been slowed down by COVID. On the generation capital side, the family office, it's a much, Ron and I are working with our own capital. We're not promoting anybody else's capital. So it's when we have an investment committee, it's Ron and I, okay, which is kind of nice. On the family office side, it's a little, I'm doing more growth equity, distressed debt, highly structured things. That's a different animal. So I see a lot more, not as much as I expected at this point, but I see a lot more distressed assets right now. A lot more liquidity situations that create enormous opportunities. I see a lot more funds coming in looking for NAV loans because they can't support their portfolio companies, which sometimes is interesting, sometimes it's not. But that's a very different set, and I don't do a lot of venture on the family side.
Okay. And in terms of, I guess, even the industry, does anybody else have an experience? Because what I've seen of going through a couple Zoom meetings during this time as well is that even though there might be less investments going on in certain sectors, let's say, for example, hospitality, there still is the deals going on, as Jeff mentioned, if people are looking at new technologies for sharing, new technologies maybe for things that can help out with COVID-19. So is there any opportunities that anybody else is looking into currently for their investment that's kind of changed since COVID-19? Then anybody like to share?
Yeah, I don't think Jeff and I have although we look at a lot of different industries, we have a pretty consistent thesis around, one, people matter, first and foremost. We like to invest in people that we'd like to have a beer with, and that we'd like to hang out with. Two, we look for opportunities to invest in companies that are either solving problems or addressing opportunities that need to be solved, and that are big enough to matter, right? Kind of at the end of the day. And then there's a lot more that goes into that. So I don't think we've changed our thesis. I think the worst thing you can do, especially, we're not a multi-billion-dollar fund by any stretch of the imagination. And, for us to jump all over the map, it's like investing 101, right? Be true and stick to what you believe in. And over the long run, things are going to work.
Yeah, I think we have to be a little bit careful. I've seen 100 great deals, particularly in the biotech space, little bit in ESG, although we have a big ESG focus, particularly at the family office. But whether it's the growth equity side with the family office or whether it's Whipstick Venture Capital, we've seen 100 deals that on a piece of paper and talking to the management team look like really interesting things. But if Ron and I, and this is even true on the family side, if we don't think we can add value to the model, and I don't mean corporate finance, I'm not talking corporate, you can go get corporate finance help anywhere. If we can't help technology-wise, top line, network, et cetera, then we don't get involved. Okay. And we passed on some great platforms where we just didn't think we added any value.
Okay. And just to kind of lead off of that, I think that's a good jumping off point to talk about a little bit the mission of different VC firms, of different investment communities, of different organizations, just to talk about what is the mission that a couple of the firms that you work at, what are you looking for? What drives you, I guess, to build that entrepreneurship or build the programs? And I think this would also be a wonderful opportunity to hear from Sarah about starting even the frequency program at Pillar and talk about why that team was created. Then Maha on the West Coast, maybe speaking a little bit about the mission of your organization and how you interact with either technology or the pieces that you've wanted to connect with or invest in.
Mm-hmm. Maha, why don't you jump in first and field this one?
Sure. So in terms of mission, there's a lot of talk about mission-driven venture funds, and that is not us, right? We certainly have our strategy and our thesis, but we are a financially for-profit minded venture fund. We invest, as I said, both on the healthcare and on the tech side. Within healthcare, the bulk of what we do is biopharm. So that's new drug discovery and drug development and diagnostics. And that's obviously a very, very exciting space. It's gotten more exciting in the last 6 months since COVID for obvious reasons, but that's one where we've done exceptionally well over the last 33 years in business. And then on the tech side, we have traditionally stuck to our knitting around consumer and enterprise deals. On the enterprise side, it's mainly SaaS, mainly security and infrastructure deals. on the consumer side, e-commerce and social and gaming are really hot right now. And then over the last couple of years, we've been adding frontier investments, or what we're calling them, and that's really a catch-all bucket for more hard tech deals. So that includes robotics. We have a couple of deals in Boston around that, weather, autonomous vehicles, space. It's just running the gamut. So we are a generalist firm that has pods of people who focus in specific areas, and that's how we've run the business for years.
Okay, that's wonderful. So then,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, no, so please, Sarah, go ahead.
So like Maha, our goal is ultimately to make money for our investors. So we are definitely financially driven. I think, we believe the best path to do that is to back exceptional people and do it in a way that's really aligned with founders. And so we spend a lot of time just meeting people, trying to find founders who we think are have that blow through walls mentality, are deeply curious, can build momentum. And one of the ways we do that is through programs and building community. And last year we had 50 events at Pillar that were all in person. And so because we're a Boston focused fund, we did a lot of things on the ground, in person, live in Boston. And so in March and April of this year, we found ourselves reflecting on the fact that our strategy for meeting people and finding those unstoppable founders wouldn't work anymore. And we had to really reinvent ourselves and think about a new way to meet people and, tap into our existing network, but also expand it. And so, Io, you mentioned Frequency. That was when we had the idea to spin up this program, Frequency, which is a 7-week part-time flexible program for anyone who's thinking about starting a company. And so this really includes people who are noodling on an idea, thinking launching a startup might be something they're interested in pursuing at some point. They might be leaning into an idea now, or they might have just rolled out of a company or graduate program and they're actively building their company now. And so the premise was to just create a place where people could learn about the fundamentals and we could open up access and demystify entrepreneurship and startups, but people could build community with each other along that path. And so, there are some altruistic motivations in it for us of just helping to connect people and help them build a network. And then we also believe that it's a community that hopefully will find founders in who we can support with an investment or who might come to join our companies at some point in time.
Definitely. And I think the one thing I'll say is, in my experience, what's been wonderful is when you're working with a VC partner, if you're working with an investor or a mentor or someone in your network, what's wonderful, of course, is as a startup, you're trying to get capital, you're trying to get into a network to maybe have a new connection, new partnership, new deal with something in your organization. But something that a VC firm also brings that I've really found interesting, and also investment, is that, like Jeff mentioned, like Sarah mentioned, like everybody mentioned, is that that experience, that if we're able to give you value, not only in terms of capital, but give you value in terms of, do we have expertise? Have we worked on something that you worked on before? That's why I've always found the investment community pretty interesting. And one thing that someone first told me is that it's not only about the money that you're trying to go for, you're also trying to find a partner that you can see yourself for a long term. So that's what, when you're going investment, if anybody's looking at entrepreneurship, I think it's very important to make sure that there is those synergies between your partners so that you can deliver that value for them, but also on their side, they can deliver that value to you. And that's been pretty important in the community. I think one other thing that I wanted to mention and see if anybody had any questions about is that if you're an aspiring, let's say, entrepreneur looking to start your company, what are some of the things that we have to put together, or that you've seen that we had to put together to really create, maybe even start your company? Or what kind of firms do you look for? I know you mentioned there's no sort of mission, but what are you looking for in a person, an entrepreneur, to really have that drive to see the way through to creating your company? I think that's like pretty important for someone to hear of what do you need to do to be an entrepreneur. Yeah.
I'll jump in real quick. Listen, I think, first and foremost, I talked about it, and you can see I don't know if you can read it, but, we have I've instituted a set of values like any good CEO would do at a company that you're trying to turn around. And, for me, it's about character, number one. Good people, good culture tend to lead to good results. And I can't remember if it was Sarah or Maha that said, that basically run through a wall mentality, and not just to be able to have that inside yourself, but to be able to instill that as a leader, through the troops. And, that's what's most important to us. I mean, listen, all the financial metrics, all the, the opportunity you're trying to solve, the market, the total addressable market, all that stuff's got to make sense. But then at the end of the day, all that can make sense is a lot of people chasing the same rabbit. But it's the true leaders and folks with that drive that are going to win.
Definitely. And I think there's just in between, I think there's a quick question, Katie, coming from the attendees.
Yep. So we have a question just adding to what Sarah previously said. What are some of the most important things you look for in a founding team? Do you also consider e-commerce/retail, trade startups? If so, what would entice you to invest in those?
For us, so much of it is about people. We're making pre-seed and seed stage investments. And so as the first capital in, the only thing that's not going to change about the business over the course of the next 12 months is the founder, because they're so early that, the founders are oftentimes just figuring out the way and still going through customer discovery and validating the idea. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about the people who are leading those companies. And I mentioned we look for blow through walls mentality, curiosity, which is also kind of a self-awareness, knowing what you're good at and being able to seek out advice, but having conviction in your decisions. And then that ability to create momentum, which is getting people on board with your story and your vision. It's compelling people to want to join your team when you might not have a lot of money to pay them. It's getting those deals done. Just getting people really excited about what you're building is what we look for in founders.
Hey, I think, go ahead, Jeff.
So I use UIO as an example, right? So you email me 5 times. You got to hear my story. You got to know what I'm doing. I think you found me because I'm a trustee at Northeastern. 4 times I said, I don't have the time for this, IO, The 5th time I said, you know what? Why don't you come on up and we'll talk? So, back to the sweat equity persistence that Sarah talked about, really, really important. Maybe most important, in my humble opinion, is the first few times we got together. I can't remember before or after we made an initial small investment. FoodSpace was a different platform. It was a recipe platform with a purchasing option. And as we kept exploring the platform, I didn't think I thought it was interesting. I didn't think it was solving enormous problems until somehow we stumbled into food allergies, et cetera, et cetera. And then we stumbled into, and the problem, Jeff, is most websites, most Whole Foods or people purveying either restaurant or grocery, their labeling's wrong. And I said, and that could be dangerous to a peanut allergy and I said, well, how do you deal with it? Oh, we built an OCR platform that at the speed of light can much more accurately upload the actual ingredients, the allergenic information, blah, 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 blah. And that was a pivot, right? And you were able to make that pivot. The team was able to make that pivot. And now you're rocking and rolling. And it's not about a recipe site on the internet with an Instacart link. It's a completely different animal. And it was built off a piece of technology you guys built to solve what you thought at the time was a smaller problem for the vision of what you wanted to build. As it turns out, as an industry, it's a much bigger problem that you're solving. And so I think that's really important. You want founders to have the courage of their convictions, but you don't want them to have blinders so narrow that they don't recognize when they need to pivot.
Definitely. And I think Maha, I think you were about to speak about that as well. And just I'll say this, definitely, I think as I'll just mention real quick, as an entrepreneur, I think that is what's pretty interesting. If you understand, I guess, the problem, you're trying to look into a problem you have, I guess a very focused goal. My goal wasn't always even to create product transparency, but my goal was to improve nutrition in America. So if I had that open kind of vision of figuring that out, it could, with advisors, with support, with people that have helped me in my field, being able to learn more, I could find out another way to go about achieving that goal. And luckily I had wonderful advisors. So I'll just say one thing about it is this, that as an entrepreneur, definitely get advisors to help you out in the process. And that's what's also wonderful about investors, because they are one of your lead advisors. Definitely.
You know, I'd also add to that that the number one reason that we turn down a deal is not because of team, it's because of market. We usually lose money not because of teams, but because we got the market wrong, either the market size or the market timing, particularly at the early stage, which all of us are early stage investors. And that's my view. That might not be the shared view of the group here, but we spend a lot of time when we make investments thinking about, is this the right time for this solution? And can the solution with the team build a multiple billion-dollar company in it? Yes, companies pivot. Yes, teams change. But we want to know from the get-go that the idea that we're investing in is something that can be massive and can be massive within the next 4 to 6 to 10 years.
And that's pretty interesting. So I like the intersection of not only having it where the founder, believing in the founder that they can achieve that goal, but also figuring out that, is it time for flying cars or is it time for this other process? If it is time, then we can go about evaluating that. And I think just before we end off with some attendee question, just to follow up real quick on that point that you made, Maha, how do you know if it's the right time and how do you go about that analysis?
These days, the venture industry is more competitive than it ever has been. And that's why so many new entrants into the business are, as individuals, focusing in certain areas. So they're becoming subject matter experts in security, or they're becoming subject matter experts in e-commerce and D2C brands. And I think that the more you know, the more prepared you are. You know, a lot of our business is based on luck and all of that and serendipity. But as the saying goes, luck favors the prepared mind. And as much as we can educate ourselves on what is going on within a sector, we can, in this very, very competitive world, be able to move quickly and make decisions quickly and make decisions that aren't based on gut instinct, but are based on some level of knowledge of a space. But ultimately, you're right, it's a guessing game. I mean, there's no Gartner reports telling you what a new market is going to look like in 5 years, because it's a new market by definition.
Definitely. And I think what would be wonderful is just to end off with a couple of questions from the attendees in the space. Maybe Katie, you can let, and maybe direct them as well if it's open or if it's to a specific speaker.
Yeah, so they seem to all kind of be specific questions, not directed towards the panelists in general. So let's just get started with the first one. How have investment priorities changed or not since the recent highlighting of the Black Lives Matter movement? What advice would you have for Black and other non-white entrepreneurs?
I think like maybe, go ahead, Maha.
No, you can take it, Sarah, it's fine.
I think perhaps embarrassingly, it caused us to take a really good look at our portfolio for the first time and understand that we don't have a diverse portfolio. I think we were always cognizant of the fact that like we wanted aspirationally to be that and to back diverse companies. But when you look at our portfolio today, it is not a diverse portfolio. And so for us as a team, it caused us to really think about, well, why is that? You know, what is it about our network, about the way that we get introductions to founders, about our process that's leading us to invest in the same types of founders over and over again. And so it really has made us make a number of changes to our process internally to try to, you know, hopefully result in a more diverse portfolio down the line, and has made immediate direct impact on the investments that we've made already over the course of the last few months. But I think that's somewhat embarrassing because it shouldn't have taken this movement in order for us to get to that point.
The venture industry's got to do a better job. It can't be just lip service. At the same time, it's really important to understand that our industry is a set of very, very small organizations. And small organizations tend, unfortunately, to be homogenous, particularly when they're taking kind of risky bets. You want to de-risk as much as you can. So you surround yourself with people that you know, people went to school with you, people that have similar backgrounds as you. So it's no surprise that the venture industry has evolved the way it is. And it's unfortunately incumbent upon the minorities who are in the industry, and I consider myself one of them, to spend a lot of time educating our industry on what we need to do to become more diverse, and hope that movements like BLM aren't the catalyst, right? Hopefully, you know, there's hundreds of things that should have been the catalyst from decades ago. And unfortunately, we are where we are now, and we'll take what we can get, but it sucks that it's taken what it has to get to this point of awareness of the importance of diversity in our industry.
The one thing I'll just quickly say about that as well is that what's been wonderful is just kind of seeing the industry after kind of everything that's happened in the last couple of months, and seeing where there's been effort to really find those communities. I've seen a lot of VC firms really start new organizations, new ways of reaching those individuals or reaching people of minority backgrounds. So that's been wonderful to see. But I think what I've seen also as an entrepreneur, being an African-American entrepreneur, is definitely there is a lot of room for growth, but hopefully in the next couple of years, the investment community and also the minorities within that space of the entrepreneurship community, there can be more of a focus and more of an opportunity to be found. Because I think that's also one of the pieces that was pretty hard for me as I was starting off, is just even the first step of being found. So that's something that I hope that in the future there are a lot of programs like the program Sarah started, like a couple of programs that other individuals started that are looking for those early stage startups and entrepreneurs from different backgrounds. Maybe we could do just 2 more questions, Katie.
Perfect. So we got kind of a 2-part question, so I'll do that and then I'll follow it up with one more. So when you're making decisions on whether or not to invest in healthcare or biopharma, in the value proposition, how do you weigh the benefit of something like preclinical data with the team's commercial experience? And just adding on to that, what percentage of your deals tend to lose money?
I guess if any, maybe Jeff,
So
if you want to start.
I'll start with maybe, I shouldn't answer part 2 of that. I think Sarah and Maha have way more depth and experience over time on success rate. But I have been involved in 3 biotechs, and I probably looked at 50 of them. Really hard to underwrite, particularly preclinical, really hard to underwrite. Even if you've got a lead drug in a phase 2 or phase 3 trial, you know, it's not simple. And, you know, I tend to be where we've invested, and so far I've done pretty well, is focusing on solutions where there have been none, meaning, you know, whether it's rare disease, orphan communities of people that have certain conditions, where the market TAM on the face of it probably is not that interesting to big pharma, but where there might be an opportunity to create a platform with that first solution that has applicabilities across broader clinical conditions. And but I you know, Maha, Sarah may have more experience than I do in the space, but underwriting this stuff is extraordinarily difficult. And so you come back to teams, you know, there may not be a sector where teams and experience is more important than than the biotech space.
So I
We
think
see about, at the early stage, about 20 to 40% of our deals go to zero. And that depends on the time frame, which so right now we're kind of at that 25% number because there's so much capital out there. During drier periods, it's more like 40.
okay. So I think just to be cognizant of everybody's
Don't be
time on
that
the call.
statistic, IO.
No, definitely not. That's we're really working towards making that opportunity happen. But just to be cognizant of everybody's time on the call, just to kind of end off at 6, I think Katie has a couple last comments to mention. But I just want to say I really appreciate everybody joining this call, and hopefully in the future we'll have other opportunities. But thank you for everybody on the call as well. And Katie, if you want to close us off.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, panelists and IO. We really appreciate you guys jumping on and helping us put together this program. It's been great. Despite the technical difficulties at the beginning, this was a great conversation. So I just want to thank you all for that. And I just copied and pasted a survey into the chat box. So if our attendees want to give us some brief feedback, that would be great. Because we love to hear what you guys want to hear about future programming, what you would like to see from our department and from our entrepreneurship team. And that survey is right there, just a few brief questions. And I just also wanted to remind you that we will be posting a recording of this webinar and sending it to all the registrants. So anybody that may have missed out can still take a look at this recording. And it will also be posted on our website, so you can come back to it later. I also wanted to briefly highlight that Global Entrepreneurship Week is the week of November 16th, and our office is working with the Northeastern entrepreneurship ecosystem and groups on campus during that week to put on some great events. And we also plan on having at least 3 more events in October and November around pivoting your business during trying times like COVID-19, lessons learned from a startup, and how technology and innovation are shaping the entrepreneurial journey. So we hope that you guys would tune into those once we put those programmings out there. You can always keep a check on our events page for when those links get posted. Thank you all.
Thank you again, everyone. I appreciate this, and have a wonderful rest of your evening and stay safe.
Thanks,
Thank you.
IO. Great job.
Thanks, Niall.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
See you.
Bye.